August 3, 1967. Prague. The diplomatic quarter sits quiet under a blanket of summer heat, its cobblestone streets lined with embassy buildings that watch each other like suspicious neighbors. In a third-floor apartment overlooking Nerudova Street, Elizabeth Wren stands at her window, a decoded cable trembling in her hands. The words blur as tears she refuses to shed distort her vision. 18 months. 18 months of lies wrapped in kisses, of fabricated intelligence delivered between declarations of love. The man sleeping in her bed, Pavel Novotny, the Czech translator she trusted with classified assessments and her guarded heart, has been playing her from the very beginning. This is not a story about a simple betrayal. This is about something far more complex, far more devastating. This is about the moment when love becomes a weapon, and when the only way to survive is to become something you never wanted to be. Elizabeth Wren is about to make a choice that will transform her from victim to architect of one of the Cold War's most intricate psychological operations. But first, she must decide if she can bear to look at Pavel's face one more time without revealing that she knows. The cable in her hands, sent from London Station via encrypted channels, contains 3 words that changed everything. Source: Nightingale compromised. Nightingale, Pavel's code name within MI6's network. Compromised. Not captured, not killed, but something worse. Turned. Feeding her carefully crafted lies designed by KGB disinformation specialists to poison NATO's entire understanding of Warsaw Pact military positioning. Every troop movement report she'd filed, every assessment of Czech military readiness she'd sent to London, every piece of intelligence that had shaped British and American strategic planning for a year and a half, all of it contaminated. All of it part of a sophisticated Russian operation to blind the West at a critical moment in the Cold War. Elizabeth closes her eyes and remembers the beginning. How naive she'd been. How hungry for connection in this city of shadows and suspicion. It was February 1966 when she first met Pavel at a reception at the West German embassy. She'd been in Prague for 6 months, officially listed as a cultural attaché at the British Embassy, actually running intelligence operations targeting Czech military installations and government officials. Pavel had approached her near the champagne table, his English flawless, his smile disarming. He worked as a freelance translator, he'd explained, specializing in technical and military documents. He'd grown up in Brno, studied at Charles University, loved Kafka and Kundera, despised the Soviet occupation that had stolen his country's soul. He'd seemed perfect. Too perfect, she realizes now, standing at the window with Moscow's handiwork documented in the cable she clutches. But back then, in the warmth of that reception hall with snow falling outside and the string quartet playing Dvorak, she'd seen only an opportunity. A Czech national with access to military documents, disillusioned with the regime, attracted to her. She'd cultivated him carefully, following every protocol. Slow recruitment, building trust, testing his information against other sources. Except those other sources, she now understands, were probably compromised too. The KGB hadn't just turned Pavel. They'd orchestrated an entire network of confirmation, a hall of mirrors designed to make their lies appear as verified truth. She'd fallen in love with him somewhere around month 4. It hadn't been part of the plan. MI6 training at Fort Monkton had prepared her for many things, but not for the way Pavel's hand felt in hers as they walked along the Volatile River on Sunday mornings. Not for the way he read poetry to her in Czech, then translated it into English, his voice soft in the darkness of her apartment. Not for the vulnerability in his eyes when he told her about his father, executed by the communists in 1952 for the crime of being a lawyer who defended the wrong people. That story, at least, was true. She'd verified it through independent sources. But the KGB is patient. They build legends on foundations of truth, then construct elaborate lies on top. Pavel's tragic history made him sympathetic, made his supposed disillusionment credible, made Elizabeth trust him in ways that bypassed her professional training. The intelligence had been so good. That was the genius of it. Pavel had provided detailed information about Czech military exercises, troop deployments along the Austrian border, readiness assessments of tank divisions. The information was specific, verifiable in its broad strokes, and strategically significant. It painted a picture of a Warsaw Pact military that was less prepared, less coordinated, less dangerous than it actually was. Month after month, Elizabeth had filed reports based on Pavel's intelligence. London had praised her work. She'd been mentioned for commendation. Her station chief had called her one of MI6's most valuable assets in Eastern Europe. And all the while, she was doing exactly what Moscow wanted. She was helping to blind NATO to the true military capabilities massing behind the Iron Curtain. The cable explains it all in clinical language. A KGB defector in Helsinki, codenamed Granite, had provided the breakthrough. He described a disinformation operation called Zrcadlo, Czech for mirror. The operation's goal was to feed false intelligence through compromised sources to make NATO underestimate Warsaw Pact's strength and readiness. Granite had named 3 sources, one in Warsaw, one in Budapest, one in Prague, Nightingale in Prague, Pavel. Elizabeth's hand stopped trembling, the tears dry. Something cold and hard settles in her chest, replacing the pain. She has a choice to make. The protocol is clear. When a source is compromised, you burn them. You expose them to their handlers, create a diplomatic incident if necessary, extract yourself from the situation. You cut your losses and move on. But Elizabeth Wren is not interested in following protocol. Not anymore. She turns from the window and looks at Pavel, still sleeping in her bed. His face is peaceful, younger in sleep, the lines of stress that mark his waking hours smoothed away. She knows every detail of that face. The small scar above his left eyebrow from a childhood fall. The way his jaw tightens when he's concentrating. The exact shade of brown in his eyes when sunlight hits them. For 18 months she loved him. For 18 months he betrayed her. Now she will do something that MI6 never trained her for. She will turn the tables. She will become the deceiver. She will make Pavel Novotny into an unwitting double agent, feeding his KGB handlers exactly what she wants them to believe. The decision crystallizes with absolute clarity. She will not burn him. She will use him. But to do that, she must become someone else. She must bury Elizabeth Wren, the woman who loved Pavel, who trusted him, who believed in the possibility of connection even in this world of lies. She must become a perfect actress, playing the role of the deceived lover who suspects nothing. Every smile must be calculated. Every touch must serve a purpose. Every moment of intimacy must be a tactical operation. She crosses the room silently, places the cable in her handbag, and slides back into bed beside Pavel. He stirs, reaches for her instinctively. She lets him pull her close, her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. This heartbeat that she once found comforting now sounds like a countdown. Tick, 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 each beat marking another moment in the most dangerous performance of her life. When Pavel wakes an hour later, Elizabeth is making coffee in the small kitchen. She's dressed in a light summer dress, her hair pinned up, her expression calm. She's practiced this face in the bathroom mirror, loving but not suspicious, content but not complacent. Pavel comes up behind her, wraps his arms around her waist, kisses her neck. Every instinct screams at her to pull away, to confront him, to hurt him the way he's hurt her. Instead, she leans back into his embrace. She turns her head and kisses him. She tastes the lie on his lips and swallows it down. This is the beginning of the longest con of her career. Over the next weeks, Elizabeth maintains perfect normalcy. She meets with Pavel as scheduled. She accepts his intelligence reports. She asks the questions he expects. She files assessments to London that she knows are based on fabricated information. But she also begins a parallel operation, one that Pavel knows nothing about. She recruits new sources, carefully vetted through channels that bypass her station chief. She builds an alternative intelligence picture of Czech military capabilities. And she starts to craft a narrative, a false story that she will feed through Pavel to his KGB handlers. The key is subtlety. She cannot suddenly change the intelligence she appears to value. That would alert Pavel and his handlers that she's aware of the deception. Instead, she begins to show interest in different targets. She mentions, casually over dinner, that London is particularly concerned about Soviet missile installations in southern Czechoslovakia. She shares, in a moment of apparent vulnerability, that her career depends on providing intelligence about a specific military facility near Plzeň. She plants seeds, carefully and patiently, knowing that Pavel will report these conversations to his handlers. The psychological toll is immense. Every night she lies beside a man she once loved, now knowing that he's reporting on her, analyzing her moods, looking for weaknesses to exploit. Every morning she wakes up and puts on the mask of the unsuspecting lover. She laughs at his jokes. She makes love to him with apparent passion. She shares meals and walks and quiet evenings as if nothing has changed. But inside, she's dying. The woman she was is being consumed by the operative she must become. There are moments when she almost breaks. One evening in late August, they're walking along the Charles Bridge at sunset. The Volatile river flows beneath them, golden in the fading light. Pavel stops, takes her hand, and tells her he loves her. The words are perfect. His delivery is flawless, and Elizabeth knows with absolute certainty that he means it. This is the cruelest revelation of all. Pavel is not a heartless KGB operative playing a role. He's a man caught between two masters, between his duty to the state that owns him and his genuine feelings for the woman he's betraying. He loves her and he's destroying her. Both things are true. She looks into his eyes and sees the conflict there, the guilt he's trying to hide. For a moment, she considers telling him the truth, confessing that she knows, offering him a way out, proposing that they run together, defect, start over somewhere beyond the reach of both MI6 and the KGB. But the moment passes, because Elizabeth understands something Pavel doesn't. There is no escape. Not for people like them. They made their choices long ago, and those choices have made them into weapons that cannot be safely disarmed. She tells him she loves him too. The lie tastes like ash. By September, Elizabeth's parallel operation is bearing fruit. She has solid intelligence on actual Warsaw packed troop strengths, missile deployments, and readiness levels. The picture is far more alarming than what Pavel has been feeding her. The Soviets are preparing for something. The military buildup is real and significant, but she cannot simply report this to London through normal channels. If she does, it will be obvious that she's bypassed her primary source, and Pavel's handlers will know she's aware of the deception. Instead, she begins a delicate dance. She files reports based on Pavel's fabricated intelligence, but she includes subtle inconsistencies, small details that don't quite add up. She's creating a paper trail that will allow London to eventually question the source without revealing that she already knows he's compromised. Simultaneously, she starts feeding Pavel false information about her own activities and interests. She mentions, in carefully staged moments of apparent carelessness, that she's developing a new source in the Czech Defense Ministry. The source doesn't exist, but Pavel doesn't know that. She describes meetings that never happened, intelligence that was never gathered, assessments that are pure fiction. Pavel reports all of this to his handlers. Elizabeth knows because she's now being followed by different KGB surveillance teams. One's assigned to investigate the fictional Defense Ministry source. She's created a ghost for them to chase, buying herself time and misdirecting their attention. The operation becomes increasingly complex. Elizabeth is running multiple deceptions simultaneously. She's deceiving Pavel about what she knows. She's deceiving his KGB handlers about what she's doing. She's managing her own station chief, who still believes Pavel is a reliable source. And she's building a true intelligence picture through sources that remain hidden from everyone. The strain is visible. She loses weight. Her hands develop a tremor that she has to consciously control. She starts smoking again after having quit 2 years earlier. Her station chief notices and asks if everything is all right. She blames the stress on the political situation. It's autumn 1967, and Czechoslovakia is changing. The rigid Stalinist leadership is beginning to crack. There are whispers of reform, of liberalization, of a possible thaw in the frozen landscape of Soviet control. Alexander Dubček is rising in the Communist Party, bringing with him ideas that terrify Moscow. Prague Spring is coming, though no one knows it yet. In this environment of change and uncertainty, Elizabeth's operation takes on new urgency. The intelligence she's gathering suggests that Moscow is preparing for a possible intervention in Czechoslovakia. The troop movements, the readiness exercises, the positioning of forces along the borders, all of it points to a potential invasion. But this intelligence contradicts everything Pavel has been telling her. According to his reports, the Warsaw Pact military is in a routine posture, no unusual activity, no cause for concern. The divergence is stark. Elizabeth realizes she's approaching a critical moment. Soon, she'll have to make a choice. She can continue the deception, keep playing Pavel, keep feeding false information to his handlers, while gathering real intelligence through her hidden sources. Or she can bring the operation to a conclusion, expose Pavel, and risk everything. The decision is complicated by the fact that her feelings for Pavel, despite everything, haven't completely died. She hates him for the betrayal. She despises herself for still caring. But late at night, when he's asleep beside her and she's staring at the ceiling, she remembers who he was before she knew the truth, or who she thought he was, the man who read poetry, the man who told her about his father, the man who held her when she cried after a particularly difficult operation. Was any of that real? Or was it all performance, all part of the legend the KGB built for him? In October, Pavel makes a mistake. It's small, almost imperceptible, but Elizabeth catches it. He mentions a military exercise near the Polish border, provides specific details about tank movements and artillery positions. But Elizabeth knows, from her independent sources, that the exercise he's describing didn't happen. The KGB has fabricated it entirely. What's interesting is not the lie itself, but the timing. Pavel delivers this intelligence the day after Elizabeth mentioned, in a seemingly casual conversation, that London was particularly interested in Czech-Polish military cooperation. The turnaround is too fast. It reveals the mechanism of the operation. Pavel is not just passing along pre-prepared intelligence. He's receiving real-time instructions from his handlers based on what Elizabeth tells him she needs. This means the operation is more sophisticated than she initially thought. Pavel is not working alone. There's a team supporting him, analyzing Elizabeth's requests, crafting responses designed to satisfy her immediate needs while serving the broader disinformation strategy. Elizabeth realizes she can exploit this. If Pavel's handlers are reactive, responding to her stated intelligence requirements, then she can manipulate what they feed her by manipulating what she appears to need. She begins to test this theory. She mentions to Pavel that London is concerned about a specific military installation. Within a week, Pavel provides detailed intelligence about that installation, intelligence that paints it as far less significant than it actually is. She expresses interest in a particular general's loyalty to Moscow. Pavel soon delivers a personality assessment suggesting the general is a committed hardliner. Elizabeth knows from other sources that the general is actually sympathetic to reform. The pattern confirms her theory. She's not just running Pavel, she's running his entire support network. Every false requirement she expresses triggers a response from the KGB's disinformation apparatus. She's turned the operation inside out, but the psychological cost continues to mount. The intimate moments with Pavel become almost unbearable. There's a night in November when he's particularly tender, particularly vulnerable. They've made love, and he's holding her in the darkness, and he starts to talk about the future. He imagines a life beyond the Cold War, beyond the spying and the suspicion. He talks about a small house in the countryside, maybe in southern Bohemia, where they could live quietly. He describes mornings drinking coffee on a terrace overlooking hills, afternoons reading books, evenings cooking dinner together. His voice is soft, almost dreaming, and Elizabeth knows he's imagining an impossible future. There is no escape for them. There is no house in the countryside. There is only this endless performance, this relationship that is simultaneously real and completely false. She almost tells him then. The words are on her lips. I know what you are. I know what you've done. But she swallows them back, because telling him would end the operation. And the operation is all she has left. It's the only thing that makes the betrayal bearable. If she can turn his deception against him, if she can use him to mislead his masters the way he's been misleading her, then maybe, there's some meaning in all this pain. December brings the first real crisis. Elizabeth's independent sources report massive troop movements in East Germany and Poland. The buildup is unmistakable. Moscow is positioning forces for a major operation. The target is almost certainly Czechoslovakia. The reform movement is gaining momentum. Dubček is now first secretary of the Communist Party. The Prague Spring is beginning, though it's still winter, and Moscow is preparing to crush it. Elizabeth knows she has to get this intelligence to London, but she also knows that if she reports it through normal channels, it will contradict everything Pavel has been telling her. The contradiction will expose her awareness of his deception. She makes a decision. She'll use an emergency protocol, a back channel that bypasses her station chief and goes directly to MI6 headquarters. She'll report the troop buildup as intelligence from a separate source, one unconnected to Pavel. It's risky. If her station chief finds out she's running operations he doesn't know about, her career is over. but the stakes are too high. NATO needs to know what's coming. She sends the report on December 15th, using a one-time cipher pad and a dead drop that only London knows about. The message is stark. Warsaw Pact forces are preparing for intervention in Czechoslovakia. Timeline uncertain but likely within 6 months. Recommend immediate strategic reassessment. 3 days later, she receives a response. London has received her report. They're taking it seriously, but they're also confused. The intelligence contradicts assessments from other sources, including her own previous reports based on Pavel's information. They're asking questions. They want to know about her source. They want verification. Elizabeth realizes she's created a problem. She split the intelligence picture. London now has 2 contradictory narratives, one from Pavel suggesting everything is normal, one from her hidden source, warning of imminent crisis. She needs to resolve this contradiction without exposing the operation. She decides on a bold move. She'll allow Pavel to discover that she has another source. Not the real sources, but a fictional one that she can control. She stages it carefully. She leaves a coded message in her apartment, hidden but not too well hidden. She knows Pavel has access to her apartment when she's not there. The KGB has provided him with keys. The message is designed to look like communication from a high-level source in the Czech military, someone warning about the troop buildup. It's bait. Pavel takes it. Within a week, he confronts her. He's concerned, he says. He's heard rumors that she might be in danger, that she might be working with someone who could be a KGB plant. He's worried about her safety. The performance is masterful. He seems genuinely frightened for her. Elizabeth plays her part. She's defensive at first, then reluctantly admits that yes, she has developed another source. She's been keeping it quiet because the source is extremely sensitive, high-level, dangerous to expose. Pavel presses for details. Elizabeth provides just enough to make it credible. A colonel in the Czech Defense Ministry, a man disillusioned by Soviet control, someone with access to real strategic planning. None of it is true, but Pavel believes it, or his handlers do. Because the next intelligence Pavel provides suddenly shifts, he starts reporting increased military activity. Not as dramatic as what Elizabeth's fictional colonel is supposedly reporting, but enough to suggest that yes, something is happening. The KGB is adjusting their disinformation to account for the fact that Elizabeth has a second source. They're trying to maintain Pavel's credibility while acknowledging the reality that they can no longer completely hide. Elizabeth has forced them to change their strategy. She's no longer a passive victim of their deception. She's an active player shaping the intelligence environment. But the victory is hollow, because she's still lying to Pavel. She's still sleeping beside him at night. She's still pretending to love him while using him as a weapon against his own masters. The person she's becoming frightens her. There's a moment in January 1968 when she looks at herself in the mirror and doesn't recognize the woman staring back. Her eyes are hard. Her smile is calculated. She's become the thing she once despised, a manipulator who uses intimacy as a tool, who weaponizes trust. She thinks about her training at Fort Monkton. The instructors had warned about this. They'd said that the greatest danger in intelligence work isn't getting caught, it's losing yourself, becoming so immersed in deception that you forget what truth feels like. Elizabeth had thought she understood. She hadn't. Not really. Not until now. Now she understands that every lie you tell changes you. Every deception you practice rewrites who you are. And there's no going back. You can't unlive the lies. You can't unknow the truths that break you. The Prague Spring accelerates. Dubček announces reforms. Censorship is relaxed. There's talk of democracy, of freedom, of a socialism with a human face. The city comes alive with hope. People speak openly in cafes about politics. Artists create work that criticizes the regime. Students organize demonstrations calling for more change. Elizabeth watches it all with a sense of doom, because she knows what's coming. Her intelligence sources are unambiguous. Moscow will not tolerate this. The tanks will come. It's only a question of when. Pavel seems caught up in the optimism. He talks about the changes with genuine enthusiasm. He believes, or seems to believe, that Czechoslovakia might actually achieve some measure of independence. His hope is painful to witness, because Elizabeth knows it's doomed. In March, she receives new orders from London. They want her to extract Pavel. The intelligence from her fictional colonel has proven accurate enough that London now believes Pavel might be a genuine asset after all. They think he's been providing good information. They don't know he's been feeding them lies. They want Elizabeth to recruit him formally, to bring him to London, to set him up with a new identity. The order puts Elizabeth in an impossible position. She can't extract Pavel. He's not a genuine defector. He's a KGB asset. If she tries to bring him to London, he'll either refuse, blowing his cover and ending the operation, or he'll agree and become a KGB plant inside MI6 headquarters. Both outcomes are disasters. She has to tell London the truth. She sends a carefully worded message explaining that Pavel is compromised, that she's been aware of this for months, that she's been running him as an unwitting double agent. The response from London is swift and furious. Why didn't she report this immediately? Why did she continue the operation without authorization? Why did she put herself at risk by maintaining an intimate relationship with a known hostile agent? Elizabeth has no good answers. Or rather, she has answers that she can't put into an encrypted cable. How can she explain that she needed to turn the tables, that she couldn't bear to be simply a victim? That some part of her, some broken part, needed to believe she could salvage something from the betrayal. London orders her to terminate the operation, expose Pavel, extract herself, return to London for debriefing. But before she can act on these orders, everything changes. April 1968. The Soviet Politburo makes its decision. The intervention will happen. The exact date is still being determined, but the plan is set. Warsaw Pact forces will invade Czechoslovakia. They will crush the Prague Spring. They will restore orthodox communist control. Elizabeth learns this from her sources. She has perhaps 4 months to prepare. 4 months before tanks roll through the streets of Prague. 4 months before everything she's been working toward becomes irrelevant. She makes a final decision. She will tell Pavel the truth, not all of it. Not about the double operation she's been running, but about what's coming. She will give him a chance to make a real choice, to defect genuinely, to escape before the hammer falls. It's a violation of every protocol. It's a betrayal of her orders. But Elizabeth Wren no longer cares about protocols or orders. She cares about the man sleeping in her bed, the man who betrayed her, the man she still, against all reason, loves. They meet on a warm evening in late April. They're at her apartment. She's made dinner. They've shared a bottle of wine. The windows are open and the sounds of Prague drift up from the street below. Laughter, music. The sounds of a city that doesn't know it's living in its last months of freedom. Elizabeth looks at Pavel across the table. She takes a breath. She begins to speak. She tells him about the invasion. She tells him about the Soviet plans. She tells him that he has a choice. He can stay and face what's coming, or he can come with her. She can get him out. She can get him to London. He can defect for real. She can protect him. Pavel listens in silence. His face is unreadable. When she finishes, he sits quietly for a long moment. Then he asks the question she's been dreading. How long have you known about me, about what I am? Elizabeth meets his eyes. Since August, since last August. The confession hangs between them. Pavel's face crumbles. The mask he's been wearing for 18 months falls away. What's beneath is raw and broken. He starts to speak, then stops, starts again. He tells her the truth. The KGB recruited him in 1964. His father's execution wasn't enough to save him from suspicion. The state owned him. They threatened his mother, his sister. They gave him no choice. When he met Elizabeth, it was an assignment. Cultivate the British intelligence officer, feed her information, report on her activities. But somewhere along the way it became real. He fell in love with her. He tried to quit. His handlers refused. They threatened to expose him, to arrest his family, to destroy everyone he cared about. So he continued, hating himself, loving her, trapped between two impossible loyalties. Elizabeth listens to his confession. She should feel vindicated. She should feel satisfied that she's broken him. Instead, she feels only sadness. They're both victims, both pawns in a game neither of them chose to play. Pavel asks what happens now. Elizabeth tells him. They can run. Together, she has resources, she has contacts. They can disappear before the invasion. They can start over, or he can stay. Face the consequences, take his chances in the chaos that's coming. Pavel looks at her for a long time. Then he says something that breaks what's left of Elizabeth's heart. I can't leave my family, my mother, my sister. If I defect, the KGB will destroy them. I can't do that, not even for you. Elizabeth understands. She's always understood. There is no escape, not for people like them. They made their choices. They're living with the consequences. That night they make love one last time. It's different from before. There are no lies between them now. Only truth. Only the terrible, painful truth of two people who love each other and are destroying each other. In the morning, Pavel leaves. Elizabeth watches him go from her window. She knows she'll never see him again. Not like this. Not as lovers. Whatever they were, whatever they might have been, it ends here. She sends her final report to London. She details the operation. She explains her decisions. She accepts responsibility for the violations of protocol. She requests reassignment. London grants it. By June, Elizabeth Wren is back in England. She's debriefed extensively. Her operation is analyzed, criticized, and ultimately classified. The intelligence she gathered about the impending invasion is passed to NATO. Preparations are made, not to stop the invasion, that's impossible, but to respond appropriately when it happens. August 20th, 1968. Soviet tanks roll into Prague. The Prague Spring is crushed. Dubček is arrested. The reforms are reversed. Czechoslovakia returns to Orthodox communist control. Elizabeth watches the news from a safe house in Surrey. She sees the footage of tanks in Wenceslas Square. She sees Czech citizens confronting the invaders. She sees the hope of spring destroyed by the reality of Soviet power. She wonders where Pavel is, if he's safe, if he thinks of her. She'll never know. Their paths will never cross again. The KGB will eventually realize that Pavel was compromised, that Elizabeth knew about the deception. They'll reassign him or retire him or worse. Elizabeth will continue her career with MI6. She'll run other operations. She'll recruit other sources. She'll serve her country with distinction. But she'll never again allow herself to feel what she felt for Pavel. She'll never again blur the line between the personal and the professional. She'll become one of MI6's most effective officers. Cold, calculating, ruthless when necessary. The woman who loved Pavel Novotny will be buried deep, locked away in a compartment of her heart that she never opens. Years later, in 1989, when the Berlin Wall falls and the Cold War ends, Elizabeth will be serving as station chief in Berlin. She'll be there when the crowds tear down the wall. She'll watch East Germans stream into the West. She'll see families reunited. She'll witness the end of the conflict that defined her life. And she'll think of Pavel. She'll wonder if he survived. If he's watching the same images. If he remembers that night in April 1968 when they told each other the truth. She'll never know. Some questions have no answers. Some losses leave permanent scars. The Cold War will end. The Berlin Wall will fall. The Soviet Union will collapse. But Elizabeth Wren will carry Prague with her forever. The city where she learned that love and betrayal are sometimes the same thing. The city where she became someone she never wanted to be. The city where she lost herself in order to survive. This is the story of Operation Mirror, a story of deception and counter-deception, of love used as a weapon, of two people caught in a machine that ground them both to pieces. History will never record it. The files will remain classified for decades, but for those who lived it, for Elizabeth and Pavel, it will never end. It will haunt them until their final days. A reminder that in the world of espionage, the greatest casualties are not always the ones who die. Sometimes they're the ones who survive.